Thank you so much. I will. My name is Eva Mårell Olsson, and I'm working at Umeå University. And I will talk about a project that we conducted in February this year. And it's about in chemistry teaching and how to develop students' spatial ability. And the computer scientist, I'm feeling a bit odd in this company. And my primarily research area is school practices and one-to-one computing. And in Sweden, that is about laptops and tablets. But I also have been conducting some small pilot studies in gamification and in the area of AR, VR, and AI, but that's more like my hobby research. And in this study, we are two researchers. It's me and a colleague of mine, Karolina Broman, and she is a chemistry educational researcher. So she's in chemistry didactics, more or less. In this, in chemistry teaching, the pedagogical challenge is how to between 2D and 3D. For example, I'm not a chemistry. They write the molecules and they have a small signs. Maybe you know about this, and how the molecule is looking in 3D. So this transition, the students are really struggling with, and the female students are struggling more than the male students, but they are compensating this with studying harder. So we are addressing this issue of how can we help or support the students to train the transition between 2D and 3D. And in this particular study, we are focusing on stereochemistry, and usually they are using ball and sticks and put this together, for example. And in this study, we conducted in this spring in February, just before the pandemic. Sorry. So we were really lucky that we were just in time to do this. And we conducted it in two courses. And we did this by observations, and we had discussions, and we made questionnaires with the students. So we kind of designed a teaching activity where the students were using the HoloLens 1, and they could see a molecule, and they can go around it, and they could rotate it, and they could move it. And the task was to memorize this molecule and then write it down on a piece of paper in 2D. And then we made a quite simple competition. So we had the first, second, and third prize who got the closest to the correct answer. Yeah, say something. And when we did this, the students struggle a bit, of course, with the technology, and it was really a first time experience for them, because none of them had used the HoloLens or tried this kind of AR glasses before. In the activity, but also in the questionnaire, and kind of an immersive experience. The most common comment when they tried the HoloLens was really, wow, so cool. And they were, in fact, one student also said that she wasn't used to about that it was possible to see a virtual object and go around it and interact with it and so on. So they also expressed in the questionnaire, for example, a perceived sense of a real object. The challenges they saw was, of course, a narrow field of view. Some of the students had a big problem focusing on the molecule, and I haven't tried the new HoloLens 2, and as I understand, it's a wider field of view with them, so that could be something else, of course. And also some of the challenges the students expressed in the questionnaire was there is a requirement for support and training to use the device. Of course, it was, as I said, a first time experience, and it was also a bit surprising that it depended on the shape of their head. We had struggling with fitting the device. Sometimes it just slides down, and compared to if they had a round shape of their head and so on. And some were struggling with have their ordinary glasses on or off, and so on. But they motivation to solve this task, and it was organized in kind of a workshop, so it wasn't mandatory in that case for this course, but just to help and support them to with this transition of 2D and 3D, and students in chemistry are really struggling with this, and even at the master level, some of them having problem with looking at the 2D representation of a molecule and then trying to see how it looks in their head, so to speak. Teachers and so on, they do this automatically. They kind of see how the molecule is looking, what it's look like in 3D, for example. With this, the TPAC model, with where I'll be discussing a bit about the challenges of using the AR technology in teaching. And in a previous study I made about gamification and emerging technologies, for example, it was quite clear that teachers in schools, for example, they have problem with combining different skills that is needed when designing teaching and learning with technologies, for example. And from the TPAC model, we need technological knowledge, we need content knowledge, of course, and in this case it's chemistry, and we also need pedagogical knowledge, and what is the added value with the technology, what, why, what, how, who, and when are we going to use it, and also like we did in this activity, and gamification, and in fact teachers have a kind of a bit of a problem with finding the pedagogical balance with the technology, with the pedagogical knowledge and the content knowledge, for finding exactly what they added new technologies. And at least at my university, and for me, for example, my technological knowledge is also a bit limited, of course, since I am not a computer scientist, or I'm a teacher from the beginning. So we also see that it's really necessary to increase the collaboration between different disciplines. And we had, when I'm using and teaching with HoloLens. The biggest problem is the Wi-Fi, because we are not allowed to install EduRoam or the certificate for the EduRoam on the device. And the ordinary Wi-Fi is when we use that with the HoloLens, every time we are taking the HoloLens off, we have to reconnect, and that is a big problem. So in this case, when I'm teaching, I have a room where I'm teaching it, I can control it, and I have to use my own router, and so I can connect to a Wi-Fi that is kind of more stable and useful with the HoloLens. But for ordinary teachers, this is quite a problem with the organizational changes. And if they don't have the technological skills with the Wi-Fi and contacting the university when they want to use it, it's very time consuming for it, so to speak. So what we think, at least in chemistry, for example, it's necessary to increase interdisciplinary collaboration. And that requires organizational changes. And I think that is quite a big problem. I think we, in a way, started a bit the discussion after the keynote. Some of the problems we discovered in our study, that we need to collaborate, for example, to cover these knowledge domain areas in a way. And that is quite hard. It's a long way to other departments. It could be a long way to collaborate with other faculties and so on. But I also think that this is necessary when we are trying to use new technologies or emerging technologies or emerging teaching practices. Design processes. This is one of my previous studies. Teachers in school, for example, they don't have tools for designing. As when I have been using university students for designing things, they have engineering students, they have these tools for designing from my these kind of design processes. Yeah, I see that my internet connection is a bit unstable. I don't know if you still hear me. Yeah, I think that was my last slide. Yeah, a quite short presentation. Maybe you have some questions.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you so much. Let's see if there are any questions. Vidalin had a tip for update of the HoloLens in the chat.
Surrounding devices, I think it's generally a good question how to move forward with rolling out AR and wearable devices across the universities. What's the model that you have in mind? Are you going for a lending library in the future, or would you expect that there are more devices per subject available? I'm sure you've discussed this and thought about it. Do you have anything new to share? How this?
Well, I don't know. Next step, we have postponed a project to the spring, hopefully because of the pandemic. But hopefully we will try to design in a chemistry course where we are combining both the VR and the Oculus Rift and the HoloLens, and trying to design activities where the students can practice the transition between 2D and 3D, and from specific pedagogical challenges that the chemistry students have. So we will try to use both VR, and there are specific applications for that, and with the HoloLens. But we have had to postpone that project because of the pandemic, so we are not.
But that makes it only gradually better if you have then one AR device and one VR device. clearly is still not one device per student. We are working here, by the way, towards more mixed scenarios, that you kind of have a lead learner with one expensive device, and then you have kind of observer learners that can follow what the lead learner is doing on devices. Kind of the let's watch through the window while someone wearing the driving hat. But that's also means the apps have to be built in a different way, so as to allow for that sharing. We're developing in the Arete project a component with well, led by partners Tech. They're developing a multi-user sharing component, which is open source. Still at its beginning at the moment. We have shared in the AR4U project very good instruction on how to build in Unity multi-user sharing support. It's getting better and easier to use, in particular with, if you check the textbook, the sharing section on Code Reality. The chapter on sharing experiences uses the PUN server for multi-user sharing. It's very easy to use. So I think that's my advice, to think more of collaborative learning in the future, and think of how we can kind of create shared experiences across devices, because we will still have that bottleneck for a while, I guess. It won't go away. Devices are still pricey, and even if that improves, it still is pricey.
Okay. Great. So thank you very much, Eva. And
thank you.
Let's see, because you always are involved in interesting projects, what the next one is going to be. I'm going